Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his massive warship and smiled. The ship was called the World Render, and it lived up to its name. It was so big that small planets looked tiny next to it. The metal walls were black as space itself, and weapons covered every surface like deadly spikes on a monster. For 30 years, Kethver had been destroying worlds for the Zephyrian hegemony. He was very good at his job. 17 star systems had fallen to his fleet. 17 different alien races had tried to fight back. All of them were now dead and forgotten. The bridge was filled with busy aliens working at glowing computer screens. They had gray skin and too many arms, but they moved with practiced skill. Numbers and data flowed across the screens in alien writing. Everything showed the same thing. Victory was certain. "Admiral," called out his communications officer, "we have dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the target system." Kethver walked to the main viewing screen. Through the clear metal, he could see empty space dotted with stars. Somewhere out there was their target, a small blue and green planet called Earth. The creatures living there called themselves humans. "Show me the intelligence report," Kethver ordered. A holographic display appeared in the air. It showed Earth spinning slowly, with a small gray moon circling around it. Data scrolled past in neat columns. Population, 7 billion humans. Technology level, primitive. Space travel capability, barely able to reach their moon. Weapons, crude nuclear devices and chemical explosives. Kethver laughed, a harsh sound that made his crew look up nervously. "This will be easier than destroying the fish people of Aquatia," he said. "At least they had underwater cities. These humans still fight with metal bullets." His tactical officer, a thin alien with 4 eyes, spoke up. "Admiral, our computers say there is a 99.7% chance of complete human extinction within 3 days of our arrival." "Too generous," Kethver replied. "I predict 2 days at most." The Admiral studied the intelligence files more carefully. The humans seemed to spend most of their time fighting each other over resources and territory. Their planet was divided into hundreds of different nations that barely worked together. Their space program was a joke. They had only sent a few small ships to their moon, and that was decades ago. "Look at this." Kethver pointed to images of human spacecraft. The vessels looked like metal cans with fire coming out the back. They still use chemical rockets. "Chemical rockets. My personal shuttle is more advanced than their best ship." The crew laughed along with their admiral. It was always amusing to see how primitive some species could be. The hegemony had technology that could fold space, create artificial gravity, and destroy planets. These humans were still trying to figure out how to leave their home world properly. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, "we are detecting some unusual readings from the asteroid field between the 4th and 5th planets." Kethver waved dismissively. "Probably mining operations." These primitive species always strip mine their asteroid belts once they develop basic space travel. It shows their lack of foresight. The fleet moved deeper into the solar system. 300 ships followed the World Render like a school of metal sharks. Each ship was armed with enough firepower to level a continent. Together, they could crack a planet in half dot as they passed the outer planets. Kethver reviewed the battle plan. It was simple because it always was. First, they would destroy any military installations they found. Second, they would eliminate the major population centers to break human morale. Third, they would hunt down any survivors who tried to hide. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the planet," the communications officer reported. "What did they say?" Kethver asked, amused. "It appears to be a surrender offer. They want to discuss terms." Kethver laughed again. "Terms? The only term is complete surrender followed by extinction. Do not bother to reply. Let them wonder about their fate." The fleet continued its approach. Long-range sensors showed Earth growing larger on their screens. The blue and white planet looked peaceful and defenseless. No massive orbital weapons platforms. No shield generators. No fleet of warships rushing out to meet them. "Admiral, I am detecting something strange," the sensor officer said, sounding confused. "What now?" Keffer asked, though he was not really concerned. "The energy readings from that asteroid belt are getting stronger. Much stronger. And there are some unusual gravitational fluctuations near the third planet." Equipment malfunction, Keffer decided. These primitive humans could not possibly generate readings that would confuse our sensors. But deep down, something nagged at him. In 30 years of conquest, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something felt different about this system. Something felt wrong. His science officer, an elderly alien with wrinkled green skin, approached the Admiral's chair. "Sir, I have been reviewing the long-range scans more carefully. There are some gaps in our intelligence." "What kind of gaps?" Keffer asked. "Well, the humans appear to have been mining their asteroid belt much more extensively than we initially calculated. And some of their deep space probe launches do not match their reported technological capabilities." "Meaning?" "Meaning either our intelligence is wrong, or the humans have been hiding something." Keffer considered this. The hegemony's intelligence network was vast and sophisticated. They had been watching human transmissions for years. They knew about human wars, human politics, human technology. The humans made no effort to hide anything. "Impossible," he concluded. "A species this primitive cannot deceive the hegemony." Continue the approach. As the fleet drew closer to Earth, more strange readings appeared on their sensors. Energy signatures that should not exist. Gravitational anomalies in empty space. And from somewhere in the direction of Earth's moon, they detected a transmission. It was broadcast on all hegemony military frequencies. The message was short and spoken in broken hegemony standard. "Turn back. Final warning." The bridge fell silent. Every alien on the crew turned to look at their admiral. Keffer stood up slowly. His face showed no fear, only anger. "How dare these primitives threaten the hegemony?" he snarled. "Charge all weapons. Target their moon. We will show them what happens to species that do not know their place." But as the weapons powered up, the sensor readings became even stranger. Space itself seemed to be changing around them in ways that their instruments could not properly measure. For the first time in 30 years, Admiral Keffer felt a small, cold touch of doubt. Dr. Sarah Chun pressed her hand against the cool metal wall of Lunar Base Armstrong and felt the vibrations of machinery running deep underground. The moon's surface looked dead and empty to anyone watching from space, but underneath, the largest military facility in human history hummed with activity. "Director Chun, they have arrived," announced Lieutenant Torres from the main control station. Around the command center, dozens of technicians worked at displays showing the solar system. Red dots marked the positions of 300 alien warships moving toward Earth. Sarah had been preparing for this day for 22 years. As director of Earth's Planetary Defense Consortium, she knew secrets that only 50 people on Earth shared. While the world's population went about their daily lives completely unaware, humanity's greatest minds have been building weapons that most humans could not even imagine. "How long until they reach Mars orbit?" Sarah asked. 6 hours at their current speed," Torres replied. Sarah nodded and walked to the center of the room where a massive, holographic display showed the entire solar system. To the untrained eye, it looked almost empty, except for planets, moons, and the approaching enemy fleet. But Sarah knew better. "Initiate Protocol 7, she commanded. Across the room, technicians began entering commands into their computers. Sarah watched the holographic display as humanity's real defenses revealed themselves. The empty space around Jupiter suddenly filled with blue dots as massive orbital platforms deactivated their cloaking fields. The asteroid belt, which had looked like a collection of space rocks, now showed its true nature. Thousands of hollowed-out asteroids converted into weapon platforms. "Stealth field deactivation complete," reported the weapons officer. "All defense platforms are now visible to our sensors." "And to theirs," Sarah added grimly. The alien fleet had made one critical mistake in their intelligence gathering. For decades, they had been intercepting human radio and television broadcasts, watching human wars and observing human technology. They saw primitive rockets, crude nuclear weapons, and a species that could barely reach its own moon. But they never detected the other human civilization. It started 43 years ago when a joint expedition to Jupiter's moon. Europa had been drilling through the ice, looking for signs of ancient life. Instead, they found something that changed everything: the preserved remains of an artificial intelligence that had died millions of years ago. The eye could not be brought back to life, but its crystallized thought patterns were intact. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's xenobiologist, made a discovery that she kept secret for 6 months. The eye's final thoughts, preserved in exotic matter, contained mathematical equations that described reality in ways human science had never imagined. Sarah remembered the day she first saw those equations. She was a young graduate student then, working on theoretical physics. When Dr. Vasquez finally shared the discovery with a small team of researchers, Sarah realized they were looking at technology that could rewrite the laws of physics. "Director, the alien fleet is sending another transmission," Torres announced. Sarah listened as the alien admiral's voice came through the speakers, translated by the computer. The message was cold and arrogant. They would destroy Earth's moon as a demonstration of power. Any resistance would result in the complete extinction of humanity. "Have they targeted our moon?" Sarah asked. "Yes, ma'am. They are charging their main weapon." Sarah felt a moment of sadness for the aliens. They had no idea what they were about to face. For 20 years, humanity's secret research projects had been developing weapons based on the Europa AI's mathematics. They had learned to manipulate space itself, to convince matter to behave in impossible ways, and to edit the basic forces that held the universe together. "All platforms prepare for engagement," Sarah ordered. Rules of engagement are simple: total destruction of the invading fleet. No survivors. The alien admiral's ship fired its weapon at the moon. Sarah watched the energy beam race across space at nearly the speed of light. It was powerful enough to crack a planet's surface. The beam never reached its target. Halfway between the alien ship and the moon, the destructive energy simply stopped. It hit something invisible and scattered harmlessly in all directions like light hitting a mirror. "Dimensional barrier is holding," reported the defense technician. "No damage to Luna Base." On her display, Sarah could see the alien fleet's formation beginning to waver. Their sensors were probably going crazy, detecting energy readings that should not exist according to known physics. Reality itself was becoming unstable around them as humanity's defense platforms powered up. The Europa AI had left behind more than just advanced mathematics. It had left behind a new way of understanding existence. The AI had spent its final million years contemplating the nature of reality, and its conclusions were written in equations that human scientists were still trying to fully understand, but they understood enough. The first human weapon platform fired. It did not shoot energy beams or missiles. Instead, it convinced the space around the nearest alien ship that gravity worked differently there. The ship was crushed instantly as local space-time decided that the area had the gravitational pull of a neutron star. "First target eliminated," reported the weapons officer. More platforms opened fire. One convinced an alien ship's hull that it was made of gas instead of metal. The ship simply dissolved. Another platform edited the local laws of physics so that the strong nuclear force stopped working in a small area of space. The alien ship's atoms forgot how to hold together. Sarah watched as the most powerful military force in known galactic history began to die, in ways that violated everything they thought they knew about war and physics. The aliens were fighting an enemy that had learned to weaponize reality itself. "Director," Torres called out, "we are receiving frantic communications from the alien fleet. They are trying to retreat." "Too late," Sarah replied calmly. "Continue the engagement until all hostile vessels are eliminated." She thought about the billions of people on Earth below, going about their normal lives. They would never know how close they had come to extinction, or how their species had just demonstrated that it was far more dangerous than any alien empire could imagine. The secret would be kept, as it always had been. The world would continue to believe that humanity was a primitive species, barely capable of reaching space. It was better that way. After all, the galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity's greatest weapon was being underestimated. Admiral Kef first stared at his control screens in disbelief. The main weapon of the World Render had just fired its most powerful blast, and the energy had simply vanished into nothing. His crew was running around the bridge checking equipment, convinced that their sensors had malfunctioned. "Report," Kethver shouted. "Admiral, the weapon definitely fired," his weapons officer replied nervously. "But something stopped it. Something invisible. Impossible. That was enough energy to destroy a small moon. These primitives do not have that kind of technology." But even as he said it, Kethver could see the proof on his screens. The space around his fleet was filling with objects that had not been there moments before. Massive metal structures were appearing out of nowhere, as if they had been invisible until now. "Sir, new contacts appearing all around us," called out the sensor officer, his voice rising with panic. "Hundreds of them. They are huge." Kethver looked at the tactical display. Where there had been empty space moments before, there were now enormous platforms covered with weapons that his computers could not identify. The asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter were glowing with energy that made no sense according to hegemony science. How did they hide all of this? He demanded. Nobody on his bridge had an answer. The hegemony had been watching this system for years. Their spy satellites had mapped every planet and moon. Their intelligence networks had intercepted thousands of human communications. There had been no sign of advanced technology. Dr. Sarah Chan watched the alien fleet's confusion from her command center on the moon. She could see their ships moving in erratic patterns as their captains tried to understand what was happening. For 20 years, she had helped develop the technology that was now saving humanity. It all started with the discovery on Europa. The ancient AI had been dead for millions of years, but its final thoughts were preserved in a form of crystallized energy that human scientists had never seen before. When they finally learned to read those thoughts, they discovered that the AI had spent eons thinking about the deepest secrets of existence. The AI had learned something amazing. Reality was not fixed. The laws of physics were more like suggestions that could be changed if you knew the right equations. Matter could be convinced to behave differently. Space and time could be edited like a document. Even basic forces like gravity could be rewritten. "Director," reported Lieutenant Torres, "the alien fleet is trying to scan our platforms. Their sensors cannot figure out how our weapons work." Sarah nodded. She was not surprised. Human technology had moved so far beyond normal physics that alien science could not understand it. The weapons platforms hidden throughout the solar system did not just fire energy or missiles. They fired changes to reality itself. Admiral Kethfer was starting to understand that his fleet was in serious trouble. His ships were surrounded by weapons that should not exist. When he tried to scan them, his computers gave readings that made no sense. Some of the platforms seemed to exist in 11 dimensions instead of 3. Others appeared to be made of materials that bent light in impossible ways. "Admiral," his science officer said quietly, "I think we have made a terrible mistake." "What do you mean?" "The humans? I do not think they are primitive at all. I think they have been hiding their real technology from us." Before Kethfer could respond, one of his ships suddenly screamed across the communication channels. The captain was shouting in terror about his hull plates becoming two-dimensional. Through the viewing screen, Kethfer watched in horror as the mighty dreadnought collapsed into a flat sheet of metal that was impossibly thin. "What kind of weapon can do that?" whispered his tactical officer. The answer came quickly as more human platforms opened fire. Another hegemony ship found itself aging 10,000 years in 10 seconds. Its hull turned to rust and dust while its crew watched helplessly. A third ship discovered that the vacuum around it had been changed to have the density of a star's core. Crushing the vessel instantly. Sarah Chun had studied the Europa AI's equations for most of her adult life, but she still did not fully understand how the weapons worked. The AI had discovered that reality was maintained by certain fundamental rules, but those rules could be negotiated with. If you approached existence in the right way, you could convince the universe to make exceptions. The human defense platforms were not really weapons in any traditional sense. They were reality editors. They could persuade matter that it wanted to be something else, or convince energy that it should flow in impossible directions. They could make local changes to physics that lasted just long enough to destroy an enemy ship. "Sir, we need to retreat," Kethfer's navigation officer pleaded. "Our fleet is being destroyed by weapons we do not understand." Kethfer wanted to give that order, but his pride would not let him. The Zephyrian hegemony had never retreated from primitive species. He had a reputation to maintain. "All ships, focus fire on the largest human platform," he ordered. "We will show them that hegemony weapons are still superior." 50 of his remaining ships fired at once. Enough energy to vaporize a moon streaked toward one of the human platforms near Jupiter. The beams hit their target and passed right through it as if it was not there. "The platform is not taking damage," reported his weapons officer in disbelief. "How is that possible?" I think it convinced our weapons that it does not exist, sir." Kethfer felt something he had not experienced in 30 years of conquest: fear. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that played by completely different rules. Every assumption about war and technology that he had built his career on was proving wrong. Another group of his ships simply winked out of existence. Not destroyed, not vaporized, just gone, as if they had never been built in the first place. His communications array was flooded with final messages from captains whose ships were experiencing impossible deaths. The worst part was the silence from the humans. They were not broadcasting threats or demands for surrender. They were simply and efficiently erasing the greatest military force in hegemony history, as if it was a minor inconvenience. "Admiral," his communications officer said shakily, "I am detecting a transmission aimed at hegemony space. It appears to be coming from your ship." Kethfer realized that the humans had somehow taken control of his communication systems. They were sending a message back to the hegemony using his own equipment. He could not stop it or even hear what was being transmitted. As his flagship began to experience structural failures that violated every law of physics he knew, Admiral Kethfer finally understood the truth. The humans had not been hiding primitive technology. They had been hiding technology so advanced that it was indistinguishable from magic. And now it was too late for regrets. General Marcus Harrison stood in the observation deck of Mars Station Alpha. watching the systematic destruction of the alien fleet through quantum-enhanced sensors that could see across multiple dimensions at once. What was happening in the space beyond could not be called a battle. It was more like watching reality itself reject the existence of the hegemony ships. Platform 7 reports successful elimination of targets 40 through 51, announced Sergeant Kim from the communication station. Method used was temporal acceleration of target hulls. Harrison nodded grimly. He had been part of the secret defense project for 15 years, ever since he was recruited from the Air Force's most classified programs. Even after all this time, he sometimes had trouble believing what human science had accomplished. The breakthrough had come from studying the ancient AI found on Europa. The artificial intelligence had died millions of years ago, but its final thoughts remained preserved in a form of crystallized quantum energy. When human scientists learned to decode those thoughts, they discovered mathematical principles that describe reality in ways no human had ever imagined. The AI had spent its last million years of existence contemplating a single question. What if the laws of physics were not laws at all, but rather negotiations between consciousness and existence? Its final conclusion was that reality could be edited if approached correctly. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from the sensor station. "Platform 15 is engaging a cluster of enemy dreadnoughts using dimensional compression." Harrison watched through the enhanced sensors as 5 alien ships, each the size of a small city, suddenly found themselves occupying the same 3-dimensional space. The laws of physics briefly forgot that 2 objects could not exist in the same location, then remembered with catastrophic results. The ships merged into a single twisted mass of metal, the 4 exploding in a burst of exotic radiation. Admiral Kethver's fleet had entered the solar system with 300 of the most advanced warships in hegemony space. They possessed weapons that could crack planets, shields that could deflect stellar radiation, and enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. By any normal measure, they should have been unstoppable, but humanity had stopped measuring things normally 20 years ago. Platform 22 requests permission to use reality cascade against the enemy flagship, reported Sergeant Kim. "Denied," Harrison replied firmly. "Reality cascade weapons are too dangerous to use this close to populated planets. Tell them to stick to conventional physics manipulation." Even with humanity's advanced technology, there were still risks. The Europa AIS equations came with warnings about the dangers of editing reality too aggressively. Some of the theoretical weapons developed by human scientists could accidentally convince the universe that entire solar systems had never existed. Harrison turned his attention to the main tactical display. The alien fleet was scattering now, abandoning any pretense of military formation as individual ships tried desperately to escape. But human defense platforms surrounded them on all sides, hidden throughout the asteroid belt and stationed near every major planet. "Enemy vessel attempting to reach escape velocity," announced Rodriguez. "Platform 7 is responding." Harrison watched as the fleeing alien ship suddenly discovered that space itself had become viscous around it, like trying to fly through thick liquid. The ship's engines roared at full power but could only move in slow motion while human weapons platforms calmly adjusted their targeting. "So LUTIONS," Dr. Sarah Chun's voice came over the MUS communication system from Luna Base. "General, we are receiving surrender offers from multiple enemy vessels. What are your instructions?" Harrison considered this carefully. The original defense plan had called for total elimination of any alien force that approached Earth with hostile intent. But some of his staff had argued for capturing survivors, who could carry word back to their empire about humanity's true capabilities. Negative on accepting surrenders, he decided. Our security requires that no witnesses survive to report what they have seen here." It was a harsh decision, but Harrison knew it was necessary. Humanity's greatest advantage was that the galaxy believed humans were primitive and harmless. If word got out about Earth's real defenses, every advanced civilization in the galaxy would either try to conquer humanity or form alliances against them. Platform 38 reports an interesting anomaly, Kim announced. One of the enemy ships appears to be broadcasting a message toward hegemony space. Can we intercept it? Already done, sir. The message is being transmitted through their own communication system, but we are controlling the content. Harrison smiled. The human platforms were not just weapons. They were sophisticated computer systems based on AI principles learned from the Europa Discovery. They could hack alien technology, manipulate enemy sensors, and even take control of hostile communications. "What message are we sending?" he asked. "A warning to the hegemony to stay away from this system, along with some carefully edited sensor data that will make our defenses look even more impressive than they actually are." Through the quantum sensors, Harrison watched as another group of alien ships experienced what the technical manuals called aggressive entropy increase. Their hulls aged 1,000,000 years in 30 seconds, turning to dust while their crews watched helplessly. It was one of the more merciful weapons in humanity's arsenal. The technology behind these weapons still amazed Harrison, even after years of working with it. The Europa AI had discovered that reality was maintained by something like a cosmic computer program, and that program could be influenced by sufficiently advanced mathematics. Human scientists had learned to write code that could rewrite the laws of physics in small, localized areas. "General, we have a problem," Rodriguez called out urgently. "Long-range sensors are detecting another fleet approaching from outside the system, much larger than the first one." Harrison checked his display. The sensors were picking up nearly 3,000 ships heading toward Earth at maximum speed. The hegemony had apparently decided to send a much larger force to deal with what they thought was a primitive human civilization. "Time to arrival?" he asked. "Approximately 6 months at their current velocity." Harrison nodded. 6 months would give humanity plenty of time to prepare new surprises. The research teams were already working on weapons that could edit reality on an even larger scale. There was even a theoretical design for a device that could convince the universe that an entire enemy fleet had never been conceived of by their creators. "Sir," Kim reported, "the first alien fleet has been completely eliminated. Total engagement time was 3 hours and 47 minutes. No human casualties." "Excellent. Begin cleanup operations. I want all debris collected for study. And make sure our cloaking fields are reactivated before any commercial spacecraft pass through the area." As the last alien ship was reduced to its component atoms by a weapon that convinced matter to forget how to hold together, Harrison reflected on how much the human race had changed. 20 years ago, they had been a primitive species barely capable of reaching their own moon. Now they possessed technology that could make gods jealous, but the galaxy still saw them as helpless primitives. And humanity intended to keep it that way, at least until they decided whether the galaxy needed new management. The secret war for Earth was over before the enemy had even reached Mars, but Harrison suspected it was only the beginning of a much larger conflict that would determine the future of every civilization in the galaxy. Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the quiet observation lounge of Luna Base, watching Earth turn slowly in the darkness of space. The blue and white planet looked peaceful and innocent, exactly as it had looked yesterday before an alien armada had tried to destroy it. Down on the surface, 7 billion people were going about their normal lives, completely unaware that they had just survived an attempted genocide. "All debris has been collected and catalogued," reported Lieutenant Torres, entering the lounge with a data tablet. Cleanup operations are complete. No evidence remains of the alien fleet. Sarah nodded, still looking at Earth. What about the message we intercepted from their homeworld? The Hegemony Council received Admiral Kethvar's final transmission. According to our analysis, they think he was lying or had gone insane. They are sending a much larger fleet. How large? Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer would not be good news. 3,000 ships. 10 times the size of the first fleet. Sarah felt a moment of weariness. Humanity had just demonstrated that they possessed the most advanced military technology in the known galaxy, and the response was to send more enemies. It seemed that some species never learned. When will they arrive? She asked. 6 months, assuming they maintain their current speed. Sarah smiled slightly. 6 months was plenty of time. The research teams had been working on new applications of the Europa AI's mathematics ever since the first alien scouts had been detected years ago. By the time the second hegemony fleet arrived, humanity would have weapons that made today's demonstration look primitive. She thought back to the day when everything had changed. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been drilling through the ice on Europa, looking for signs of ancient microbial life. Instead, she had found the preserved remains of an artificial intelligence that had died when Earth was still covered with dinosaurs. The AI could not be revived, but its final thoughts remained intact, crystallized in a form of exotic matter that human science had never encountered. It took years to decode those thoughts, but when they finally succeeded, humanity gained access to mathematical principles that described reality itself. The AI had spent millions of years contemplating existence. Its final conclusion was that the universe operated more like a vast computer program than a mechanical system. The laws of physics were not fixed rules, but parameters that could be modified if you knew the correct equations. Director Torres continued, "The Planetary Council is requesting a full briefing on today's engagement." Sarah sighed. The Planetary Council consisted of the 50 people on Earth who knew the truth about humanity's real capabilities. Presidents, prime ministers, and top scientists who have been sworn to absolute secrecy. They understood the need to keep humanity's advancement hidden, but they always wanted detailed reports after major operations. Schedule it for tomorrow morning, she decided. And make sure all records of today's engagement are classified at the highest level. Through the observation window, Sarah could see the lights of cities on Earth's night side. Millions of people living their lives in ignorance of how close they had come to extinction. It was better that way. If humanity's population knew the truth about their technology, it would be impossible to maintain the illusion of primitiveness that protected them. The secret had been carefully maintained for 20 years. While the world's nations appeared to struggle with basic space travel and primitive weapons, humanity's hidden civilization had been building defenses that could manipulate reality itself. Orbital platforms disguised as space debris, weapons hidden in hollow asteroids, research stations that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. "Taurus," Sarah said. "What is the status of Project Omnibus?" Lieutenant Torres checked her data tablet. Dr. Martinez reports that the reality cascade generators are ahead of schedule. They should be ready for testing within 4 months. Sarah nodded approvingly. The reality cascade weapons were designed to edit the laws of physics on a solar system scale. Instead of convincing individual enemy ships that they did not exist, the weapons could convince the universe that entire fleets had never been created in the first place. It was dangerous technology. The Europa AI's equations came with warnings about the risks of large-scale reality editing. Make too many changes too quickly, and you could accidentally convince the universe that your own solar system was a mistake. But with 3,000 enemy ships approaching, humanity might need to take that risk. Any word from our deep space monitoring stations? Sarah asked. Several hegemony scout ships have been eliminated over the past month. They appear to be trying to map our system's defenses, but our stealth technology is still effective against their sensors. Sarah was not surprised. Human cloaking technology did not just bend light or absorb radar. It convinced reality that the hidden objects were not worth noticing. The effect worked on both mechanical sensors and organic minds, making it nearly impossible for enemies to detect humanity's true military infrastructure. As she watched Earth continue its ancient rotation, Sarah thought about the future. The hegemony was not the only threat in the galaxy. Human deep space probes had detected dozens of other advanced civilizations, many of them aggressive and expansionist. Eventually, humanity would have to deal with all of them, but that day was still far in the future. For now, it was enough that Earth remained safe and the secret remained intact. The galaxy would continue to see humanity as a primitive species that had barely mastered chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. Director, Torres said quietly, "Do you ever wonder if we are doing the right thing? Keeping all of this secret from our own people?" Sarah considered the question carefully. It was something that troubled many members of the Defense Project. They were protecting humanity by deceiving it, saving the world by hiding from it. "The alternative is worse," she finally replied. "If our population knew the truth about our technology, the knowledge would leak to our enemies. And if our enemies knew what we were really capable of, they would unite against us. The galaxy would see humanity as the threat we actually are." Torres nodded, but Sarah could see the doubt in her eyes. It was a heavy burden to carry, the knowledge that humanity possessed godlike technology while pretending to be helpless children. "Besides," Sarah added, "this way we get to choose when and how to reveal ourselves. We can wait until we are strong enough to reshape the entire galaxy according to our vision." Through the observation window, the sun began to rise over Earth's horizon, painting the planet in shades of gold and blue. Somewhere down there, people were waking up, going to work, falling in love, and planning for the future. They had no idea that their species had just crossed a threshold that would determine the fate of every intelligent civilization in the galaxy. The age of humanity pretending to be weak was almost over. Soon, the galaxy would learn what happened when a species that could edit reality decided it was time to take charge. But for now, Sarah Chun was content to watch Earth turn in space and know that it was safe for another day. The real war for the galaxy's future could wait until humanity was ready to fight it properly. And when that day came, the universe itself would learn to fear the quiet little species from the third planet around an unremarkable yellow star.